episode 2 of the Brutally Honest podcast.
No, that sounded like the Bruce Lee.
Bruce Lee?
It sounded like Bruce Lee, not the Brutally Honest.
No, definitely Brutally Honest.
Yeah.
You're known in the industry for being brutally honest, and I think it's probably the best name I could have ever come up with, a podcast with Dominic Ingle in it. How's your Easter weekend going, Dom?
Not too bad. Managed to avoid the Easter eggs and Cadbury's cream eggs and all the chocolate, so did a 30-kilometre bike ride instead to suppress my appetite.
All right, okay. And what's the plan today then? Did you do anything special for Easter?
Not really. I've been up this morning training with a client who's come up from London. He lost about 6 stone, so he's come up here for a week to train with me. He's doing great. Seamus, big boxing fan. So he's been around Sheffield. I've been showing him some of the famous places where boxers used to hang out, Naz's houses, where Kilbrook lives, Ryan Rhodes, all the gyms in Sheffield, Glen Rose's gym. And he's a big fan of Las Vegas. It's got a lot of gyms in Las Vegas, but he says realistically, because like Sheffield's the Las Vegas of England, isn't it? I mean, yep, so many gyms and so many fighters, so many champions come out of this area.
And it's a well-known fact. Most people would say that most of the gyms in this area are almost kind of offsprings of your dad's work.
Yeah, there's some, obviously fighters, Ryan Rose, Glenn Rose, Dave Caldwell. They all obviously train in this gym. Junior Witter's got a gym as well. Atif Shafiq's doing tremendously well. So, they're all spreading the word and they're all doing the thing.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I think in 100 years' time it'd be interesting to see what happens. People see if they can trace it back to Brendan Ingle. Let's talk about the boxing, Dom. In episode 1 we talked about this fight night last night on a Sunday, the Boxer Show on Sky Sports. We'll start with the main event. What an epic fight. I just want to initially, before we talk about the fight, you must have seen the weighing of both men. What did you think of the physical shape that both men were in? Yeah,
they're in tremendous shape. I mean, Fabio Wardley is always in good shape anyway, and Fraser Clarke not so much good shape. But I noticed, obviously, and I think I said it in the previous interview, that this is going to be the fight where we're going to find out what Fraser Clarke's made of, and he really rise to the challenge. You could see the noticeable difference on the scales. That he actually started to look, I think 6 fights into his career, like a proper athlete for once. So he's been away and done the work and realised he can't get it wrong in this fight of all fights, and he's obviously put the work in the gym.
Obviously, fight night, I think it's fair to say most people in the industry were picking Fabio to win. A lot of people are saying points. Some were saying, he'll stop Fraser will get tired, etc. Obviously, you said that Fabio would win on points or possibly a late stoppage. So just tell me, as the fight was kind of going through the rounds, what were you kind of picking up from both men?
For me, Fraser is a better boxer. He's obviously been on the amateur teams and boxing the big competitions, and Fabio's obviously been a rough and ready kind of street fighter, white collar fighter, and so it was them kind of styles, and they really worked well. You got Fraser picking the shots, and those little uppercuts inside were well placed. But then Fabio come back slinging bombs in, and you could see snatching the rounds back, and maybe referees love to not referees but judges love that kind of fighting. They're always going to score for aggression. Referees, they're always going to score for them aggressions, and Fraser were putting some nice shots together, boxing well. So it was a good clash of styles. And you know what? To be honest, looking at that fight, I probably enjoyed that fight more than Joshua's fights, last couple of fights, more than Tyson Fury's fights, more than Joseph Parker's fights. It was more entertaining, and that was at British title level. And at one time, we always used to get fights like that at British title level. Now, if you look at that performance, I was thinking this the other day, that looking at that performance for a British title fight, it could have been, and we've had fights, what hadn't been as entertaining as that as a world title fight. My favourite, the cruiserweight who won the WBO title. What do you call him? Mr. Okole, when he boxed a Polish guy. That was a world title fight, a WBO world title fight. If you would have put either of them in that fight with an opponent like that, that would have been that could have been a world title fight, that British title fight at that level. If you're looking at the Okole fight against when he won it for the WBO, that was more brutal than that fight. So looking at them two there, I think I said in my previous interview that depending on how they box, that's going to determine whether they're going to get into that big mix of heavyweights. And I think that's probably the best you're going to see of Fabio Wardley. I think he had to really raise his game, and that's probably the first time that Fraser's raised his game. But the thing for Fraser now is that he put all his heart and soul into that fight. He did everything right, and he got a draw, and it can be soul destroying. But what he's got to realise, he's got to step it up again. He's got to step it up again to get anywhere near what he's done, because sometimes it deflates fighters that much they can never get to that point again. So even if he goes back to the drawing board and carries on training like he did for that last fight, he's going to need more than that. He's going to need more than that, because, you know, Fabio's been established at that title for a few fights, and Fraser's just come into it. Now, they're both going to have to put a lot of work in, but especially Fraser, because for Fabio, he's walked away with the belt. He's still got the belt. He can still work on that. But he's going to have to, you know, he's going to have to change a lot, Fabio. He's going to have to really raise his game. But Fraser coming through, he's got to put more work in. He's got to be fitter. He's got to have more work rate. If he's going to get up to them higher levels, he's got to put it in. And looking at him on that performance, and people might laugh at this, either of them fighters on Saturday night could have beat Joe Joyce the other night. That's my opinion. Put them, either one of them in with Joe Joyce, give them a challenge, that'll be a cracking fight.
What about AJ or Tyson Fury?
No, not really, because, you know, they're at the really. I think there's a big difference between AJ, Tyson Fury compared to Joyce. There's a big gap there. The gap between Joyce and Fury or Joshua is far wider than the gap between Joyce and Fabio and Fraser. And I think it's a good fight for Joyce, because he's on the comeback. He's beat Cash Ali, and these two obviously, you know, British champions, drawn at British champion level. I think, if you know, they're probably trying to put Joyce into the big mix, but I think what will be a good fight would be either of them two with Joe Joyce.
Well, one of the things, you know, you talked about Fraser's character, and I tell you something interesting, because as I was speaking to him, I interviewed him pre-fight on the media workout today, and I told him, because he watches a lot of these interviews, and I told him that you picked Fabio to win by potential late stoppage, and, you know, it shows the kind of mark of a man that he is. He goes, I think he basically said Dom's one of the last rarest breeds of people left in boxing. So he could have took it the wrong way, but he took it like a man, took your views on point, and I got the feeling that he wanted to prove you wrong. Did he prove you wrong?
Yeah, he proved me wrong, but I think I said, though, didn't I, that he's going to have to seriously raise his game on his past performances. And you can only pass it, you know, you can only go on his past performances. On his past performances, you weren't going to beat Fabio Wardley. And you know, everybody raises the game for a title fight, you would think, but I've had fighters who haven't raised the game for a title fight. So he's obviously took a long hard look at himself and raised his game, and you know, it's great that he's done that. And you know, the way I look at it is that, you know, I like Fraser. I've known him a long time from the amateur days, going down to the AAS, watching him spar. I'd like to have picked him, you know, because I'm not going to say he's a friend, but I'm familiar with him. But, you know, Fabio's he's a British champion, and I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to, you know, give me opinion. Think, I think Fraser can win, because I don't want to say anything bad about him, because, you know, I talk to him and I see him, and like, I've got to be honest, Anna. And
it is called being brutally honest.
And Fabio, look, it's an odd place to be as a champion, because he's just got himself there. He'll be making money. Boxing's so hard, and somebody's got to lose. Well, in that case, they got to draw. But you can't, you know, wish somebody to win because you like them, you know, you like them better than somebody else. It's really on what they're capable of doing. And when you're in that position as a boxing trainer, and you're training a kid, you always want the best man to win. So, you know, fair play to Fraser. He raised his game. He proved me wrong, and I'm glad he proved me wrong. And you know, the decision was they both walked away with a lot of credibility. The difference is Fabio's got the belt, and you know, it's kind of going to be a massive letdown and deflation for Fraser. But he's got to regroup. He's got to think about himself and what he's got to do now to get back to where he needs to be. Because, like I say, there's two ways he's going to completely go off the radar. He should actually be in the gym on Monday morning, today or tomorrow, training.
After them 12 rounds?
Yeah, he should be getting and doing something, a bit of shadow boxing, moving around, keep the momentum, because he's obviously trained well for that fight. And, You know, I'll tell you a little story. One time we had John Thaxton in a fight from Norwich. He was in a fight, he won, he broke both his hands on Saturday night. He went to the hospital, had his hands potted up, and on Monday morning, he was in here doing his footwork. I looked, I couldn't believe it. And no matter whatever happened to him, win or lose, he was always in the gym on Monday morning. And he lived in Norwich. He had to drive back. He had to drive 150 miles. And he had a great career. Obviously, he became a European champion. Never made it as a world champion, but he had some tremendous fights. Obviously, the most notable with Ricky Hatton. But his work ethic was absolutely unreal. And he was a kid with not massive amounts of ability, but, you know, so much heart, so much dedication. And you had to tell him to stop training. One of the hardest trainers. He's doing really well in Norwich at the minute. But that's the kind of attitude you need when you're a fringe level fighter trying to get into the big time. You've got to be doing it when nobody else is.
That's a fair point. I'll tell you something else. I didn't tell you this because I thought I'll just save it for when I press record. When I was speaking to Fraser, obviously I was complimenting his weight loss. And guess what? One of his secrets to his weight loss was he obviously had a nutritionist, but he said there were days that he'd struggle with his diet where he was bored of the food. And he basically had the Dominic Ingle ebook. He had the Dominic Ingle ebook, which I know is still on Apple iTunes, is it?
It's on Apple iBooks, I think, yeah.
Apple iBooks, yeah. So basically, he was saying there's 5-10 minute meals in that you can quickly put together that are healthy and quick and easy to make. And basically, he was using that. So it was quite an awkward conversation because I was saying to him, oh, by the way, Dom's picked Fabio to win. And then he's like, oh, yeah, I've been using Dom's diet.
Well,
so
if you would have told me that previous to the fight, I would have told you to scrub that bit in the interview and say, well, if he's been using that book, there's absolutely no way he can lose because that's the key, you know, to all the wins. That's the secret book. A little story about that book. I actually started writing that book when I got Liam Williams. And I used to cook Liam Williams' food. I mean, Liam Williams was shocking with his food. But we used to have him round to the galley pad. It was either me or Barry who used to cook his food for him. 8 weeks out from a fight. And what I basically did for that book is write all the meals down. I gave it to Liam Williams. I'm not sure if it might have been at the time when he boxed Mark Efron, when he was boxing Mark Efron. And I realised that Liam Williams really needed to raise his game on the nutrition side. And while he was in Sheffield, you know, that's the way he got fed. It was either me or Kid Galahad cooking his food, looking after his nutrition, and he excelled. So there's absolutely no surprise that, you know, Fraser performed the way they did. It must have been down to the food, nothing to do with the training.
There you go, Dominic Ingle's diet book. And am I right in saying it's still on there? And if people want to get it, I'll put the link up.
Yeah, it's still on iBooks. It's on another one as well. If you put the links on there.
How much is it? $4.99.
It's $4.99, I think, on one and $3.55 on another.
Okay, well, for £5 you can get Dominic Ingle's ebook and you can see the secret to Fraser Clarke's weight loss. Well, obviously it wasn't for his weight loss regime, but he obviously used your diet book. I'll put the link on the comments and I'll pin it on this video. And then also, Dom, I want to talk about Fabio Wardley's character because it was quite obvious he went into that fight with that nose injury, which obviously split open. I asked his manager at the end of the fight and he kind of, I got the feeling that it was an injury that he carried in, but he didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to make any excuses, and you've got to respect that, surely.
Yeah, I mean, I was when I was watching the fight and I saw that, and you know, people were saying it could get stopped, but you're never going to get stopped on a cut across the nose. It's only ever going to be cuts above the eyes, whether you know it's gashing and there's blood going into your eyes, or it's gone too deep. And it could cause you an issue with your eye. I mean, there've been cases when I've stopped fights, and the doctor said to me afterwards, you know, it's a good job you stopped this fight. It's gone that deep. It could have actually affected their eyesight. So it's not too bad on the nose. You can always have that straightened out. I mean, look at Cole Froch. He had quite a bent nose all the way through his career. Now it looks absolutely pitch perfect, doesn't it? It's like a straight, perfect nose. I'm sure Tyan Booth will have something to say about that. But yeah, Cole Froch waited to the end of his career and had all the stuff done, his teeth and his nose, and he looks $1 million. But when you're in that ring, you know, it doesn't matter whether your ear's hanging off, your nose is hanging off. You know, you're going to carry on fighting, and it's going to be a little bit of concern for Fabio, but he showed true grit as a champion and just carried on like it was nothing.
It was incredible and enthralling the way he carried on as well, and all that blood. Would that have affected him in the fight?
Look, I always remember. Years ago we had a fighter, John Keaton, fighting a guy called Butch Leslie in Slough for some Mickey Mouse title, and it was on Eurosport, and Steve Allsworth was doing the commentary with Claude Abrams, and John Keaton got a bad cut over his eye. But by the time John had finished with this Butch Leslie had about 10 cuts all over his head, and they were talking about the amount of blood that must be lost from these cuts, and it could be dangerous, and the fighter could pass out and everything else. But you're not going to be losing that much blood, from cuts, because you've got the adrenaline to staunch it. Sometimes with a broken nose, it can be pouring out. That can be a bit concerning, but it won't have affected his performance.
And the will that they both showed going into the last 3-4 rounds, both clearly exhausted, but they just kept finding another shot. When you're the coach, because I spoke to Ben Davison, I spoke to Angel Fernandez as well, like Angel was really upset about obviously not getting the decision because he looked like he put his life and soul into that fight. Ben Davison basically said that he didn't even score it because he just got lost in the fight. So what's it like for a coach in that sort of fight? I don't know. Have you been in a similar sort of fight where it's just been end to end?
Yeah, but you, like I said, that's the thing. You very rarely get those fights at British title level. Like I always remember when Kid Galahad boxed Jazza Dickens. They were both prospects, and
that was a great fight.
And we're in that position now with Dalton Smith and the other guy, is it Adam Aziz, where everybody wants them to have this fight, and it's probably not a good idea, because when Kid Galahad beat Jazza, it set him back a good 2 years. With Fraser and Fabio, it's different because there's a lot of opportunity in the heavyweights, and secondly, Fraser's got the contract with Sky. I think he's a free agent. Fabio is
He is.
Yeah, so Fraser's got a comeback, and if he'd have got beat, there'd have been questions asked, but it was a draw. So if Ben Shalom's, smart, what he would do is he would chuck some daft money at Fabio Wardley and get him signed up.
I think from speaking to him and his team that they don't want to work like that. They rather do fight by fight deals.
But the thing is that's all right. But when you've been in boxing, is that a good idea for him would be to get onto Sky, and then for Ben Shalom to kind of send them on different routes and use them to pull the rest of them in. Because they could eliminate each other. Imagine that the Sky, Ben Shalom puts in a big thing to the board and wanting a rematch, and an immediate rematch, and say Fraser beats him. Realistically, that's going to be the end of the other fella. Now, if Fabio beats Fraser, that's a different thing. But he's under no obligation at the minute to have a rematch or sign him. So the smart thing would be to do is for Ben Shalom to chuck a load of money out of him, build them both up separately, try and draw the other 8 heavyweights, and then if not, then make a bigger match later down the line for bigger money. It's a bit, you've got to be careful being a free agent, because you've got to have a tremendous amount of ability. And I'm not disrespecting Fabio here. He's not the best boxer. And don't forget, he put his heart and soul into that fight against Fraser, who'd never really impressed anybody until that point.
Yeah.
So you got Fraser not impressing anybody. It's not looking. His fight against Dave Allen weren't the best, but he really excelled in that fight. So realistically, they've kind of found the level there. They found the level is Fabio. Is there anybody else better, slightly better than Fraser, who he's going to beat? Who can he box? He's going to have to chuck himself into the big mix now. You've got the other heavyweights. You've got the Joyce, which would be a good fight. So you've got to look at the lower type of good heavyweights. So he's going to be taking his chances there. But if he signed up and got a deal with Sky, he could be picking his fights with decent opposition, who he's going to beat and build himself into their mix. Now he's going to go from a rock to a hard place. Because the next step up for him, even Joyce is a good step up, and he's probably capable of beating Joyce, but we don't know, because we don't know how much Joyce has got left. But past that, the next step into the heavyweights is the Joe Parkers, Joshua, Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder. There's some hard fights there for him. So, he's got to be kind of picking his way through.
Was it fascinating to see that, Fabio used to be a recruitment consultant, and can you imagine a recruitment consultant showing that amount of guts and in a fight. It's mad, isn't it?
You're going to take this job, sunshine. Poof. But he always reminds me he's like a better looking version of Lenny McLean.
Yeah, people didn't like that.
They didn't like it?
No, they didn't like it. I watched it because I didn't know who he was. I went to YouTube, him like a bare knuckle fighter, and to be fair, like just a brawler, heavy handed, used to swing the hooks in. So I see what you was trying to say, but I think because he's white, I think that's why people are saying. And obviously Fabio's mixed race, so I don't know if that's why people are saying.
Who's looking at colour? That's what I'm saying.
I think that's how people took it, but I think he was on about the fighting style. And then the last question on that fight, Dom: how much does a fight like that take out of both of them men?
Yeah, it's they hammered each other, didn't they? It's
literally.
It took it out of them, and I always have to refer back to moments in time. And I'll tell you the one I've missed out is, to be honest, Fabio's and Fraser's fight wasn't as brutal, but when Ricky out-and-boxed John Flaxman for the British title fight, they absolutely murdered each other, and they were both on a stretcher, and it was at Wembley, but it was at the it's not there, and Wembley Conference Centre it was like a round building. It's been demolished now, and I can remember they pulled them into the back room on stretchers, both of them, to get stitched up. They were slotted in blood, and I think either Ricky turned to him or Flaxman turned to him, and he went, "We don't want to be having to do that again, do we?" And they were absolutely shredded to pieces. But if you think from that point, Ricky then went on and had a fantastic career. He had some tough fights. And same with John Flaxman, he improved from that. He went on and he won British title and he won European. But you don't want to be having too many fights like that in your career. It can take a lot out of you back to back. So, a bit of time off, regroup, recover, and go again.